the gunshot still rings in my ears. When our HOA president pointed a loaded gun at my disabled 12-year-old daughter, she had no idea I was a retired military colonel. Some people think wheelchair kids are easy targets. Linda Patterson learned that lesson the hard way. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The sound of the gunshot still echoes in my nightmares. My name is David Martinez and I never thought I'd have to tell this story. For 23 years I served my country as a military police officer, rising through the ranks to become a decorated colonel. I've seen combat zones, handled dangerous criminals and faced situations that would break most people. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day a neighborhood HOA president pointed a loaded weapon at my disabled daughter. It started 6 months ago when my wife Sarah and I moved to Willowbrook Estates with our 12-year-old daughter Emma. After my retirement from the military, we wanted a quiet, safe neighborhood where Emma could feel comfortable and secure. Emma was born with cerebral palsy, and while she's the brightest, most loving child you could ever meet, she uses a wheelchair and sometimes needs extra time to do things other kids take for granted. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first. Manicured lawns, friendly waves from neighbors, and a community pool where Emma could do her physical therapy exercises. We thought we'd found our forever home. That was before we met Linda Patterson. Linda was the HOA president, a woman in her 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. From day one, she made it clear that our family didn't fit her vision of the perfect neighborhood. It started small. Passive-aggressive notes about our lawn being half an inch too long. Complaints about Emma's wheelchair leaving marks on the sidewalk. Citations for our handicap-accessible van being too large for the driveway, even though it was well within the legal limits. "Daddy, why doesn't Mrs. Patterson like us?" Emma asked me one evening after Linda had yelled at her for riding her adaptive bike too slowly on the sidewalk. My heart broke a little more each time I had to explain to my daughter that some people just don't understand differences. I kept my military training in check, responding to Linda's harassment with patience and documentation. I knew bullies like her fed on reactions. But Linda Patterson had no idea who she was dealing with. As weeks turned into months, Linda's harassment intensified. She started following Emma around the neighborhood with her phone, recording her every move and claiming she was documenting violations. She convinced other HOA board members that our family was bringing down property values. The breaking point came during Emma's birthday party. We had invited a few of Emma's classmates over for a small celebration in our backyard. These weren't just any kids, they were Emma's friends from her special needs class, children who understood her challenges and loved her for exactly who she was. Watching Emma laugh and play with children who accepted her completely was the most beautiful thing Sarah and I had ever witnessed. That's when Linda appeared at our gate. "This is a violation of the noise ordinance," she announced, even though it was only 2 p.m. and the children were simply laughing and playing. "And you have too many cars parked on the street." The cars she was referring to belonged to parents who had specially equipped vehicles for their disabled children, just like ours. "Ma'am, this is a private birthday party on private property," I said calmly, my military training keeping my voice level. "We're well within our rights and it's barely past lunchtime." Linda's face turned red. "I don't care what your rights are. This neighborhood has standards and your family clearly doesn't meet them." Emma had wheeled over to see what was happening. When she heard Linda's words, I watched my daughter's face crumble. This brave little girl who faced daily challenges with a smile began to cry. "Mommy, are we bad people?" Emma whispered to Sarah. That's when I saw red. But I forced myself to stay calm. I gently guided Emma inside and asked Sarah to continue the party while I handled the situation. "Mrs. Patterson," I said, stepping closer to the gate, my voice taking on the tone I used to use with unruly soldiers. "You need to leave. Now." Something in my voice must have registered because she took a step back. But her eyes showed she wasn't done with us. 2 weeks later, Emma was playing in our front yard. She loved to tend to the small flower garden we'd planted together. It was one of the few activities where her disability didn't limit her. She could take her time, work at her own pace, and create something beautiful. I was watching from the window while working on my laptop when I saw Linda's car pull up. She got out and marched straight toward Emma. I couldn't hear the conversation from inside, but I could see Emma's body language change. Her shoulders slumped and she started to cry. I was already moving toward the door when I saw Linda grab Emma's small gardening shovel. By the time I got outside, Linda was screaming at my daughter. "You can't plant these flowers here. They're not the approved HOA plants. You're violating community standards." Emma was sobbing. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson. Daddy said I could plant them. They're just flowers. Your daddy doesn't know the rules. And neither do you, you little. That's enough. My voice cut through the air like a blade. Linda spun around, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. Maybe it was my posture. 23 years of military bearing doesn't just disappear. Maybe it was the look on my face. But something told her she'd crossed a line. Your daughter is in violation of. My daughter is a 12-year-old child playing in her own yard, I interrupted. And if you ever speak to her like that again, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. Linda's fear quickly turned back to anger. Don't threaten me. I know people. I have connections. I almost laughed. If only she knew about my connections. Leave. Now. She left, but I could see in her eyes that this wasn't over. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Emma was waiting for her special needs school bus at the end of our driveway, just like every other day. I always watched from the window until she was safely on the bus, a habit from my military days of never leaving anyone unprotected. That morning I was running late for a meeting with other retired veterans. I gave Emma a quick hug and reminded her I'd pick her up after school for her physical therapy appointment. I love you, Daddy, she said, her sweet voice filling me with the same warmth it did every day. I love you too, Princess. Have a great day at school. I was in my car about to back out of the driveway when I heard Emma scream. I've heard screams in combat zones. I've heard the cries of wounded soldiers. But nothing, compared to the terror in my daughter's voice. I threw the car in park and ran toward the sound. What I saw will haunt me for the rest of my life. Linda Patterson was standing 10 feet from Emma, pointing a handgun directly at my disabled daughter. Emma was in her wheelchair, unable to run, unable to hide, completely helpless. I'm tired of you people thinking you can do whatever you want. Linda was screaming. This ends now. Time slowed. My military training kicked in. Assess the threat. Protect the innocent. Neutralize the danger. But this wasn't a combat zone. This was my neighborhood. And that wasn't an enemy soldier threatening civilians. This was a neighborhood HOA president pointing a loaded weapon at my 12-year-old disabled daughter. Put the weapon down now. My command voice, the one that had stopped riots and controlled dangerous situations, echoed through the neighborhood. Linda's head snapped toward me, but she didn't lower the gun. Your freak daughter has been nothing but trouble since you moved here, she screamed. I'm going to end this once and for all. Emma was crying, trying to wheel her chair backward, but she was trapped against our mailbox. I started moving toward them, my hands visible, my voice steady. Linda, you don't want to do this. Put the weapon down and we can talk. Don't come any closer. She swung the gun toward me, then back at Emma. I'm done talking. You people don't belong here. That's when I heard the sirens. Someone, probably Mrs. Chen from across the street, had called the police. But the sirens seemed to panic Linda even more. She turned the gun back toward Emma, and I saw her finger move toward the trigger. I couldn't think. My daughter was in mortal danger. I launched myself forward just as the gun went off. The bullet missed Emma by inches, embedding itself in our mailbox right where my daughter's head had been moments before. I had tackled Linda to the ground, disarming her using techniques I'd learned in military police training. Within seconds, the street was flooded with police cars. Officers surrounded us, weapons drawn, shouting commands. But all I could see was Emma, still in her wheelchair, shaking and crying but alive. Alive. Emma. Emma, baby, are you okay? I crawled over to her, my hands shaking as I checked her for injuries. Daddy, I was so scared, she sobbed into my shoulder. Why did Mrs. Patterson want to hurt me? I had no answer for that. How do you explain pure evil to an innocent child? The police took Linda away in handcuffs. As they put her in the patrol car, she was still screaming about property values and neighborhood standards. Even facing attempted murder charges, she couldn't see what she'd done wrong. The lead detective, Sergeant Williams, approached me as the paramedics checked Emma over. Sir, I need to get your statement, he said. Then, more quietly, I have to ask, do you have any military or law enforcement background? The way you handled that situation. I nodded. 23 years military police. Retired Colonel David Martinez. His eyes widened. The Colonel Martinez? From the 82nd Airborne? Sir, I served under you in Afghanistan. Small world. But that conversation would come later. Right then, all I cared about was my daughter. Over the next few days, the full scope of Linda Patterson's harassment campaign came to light. The police found a detailed journal in her house where she'd been documenting our family's every move for months. She'd been taking pictures of Emma, following her schedule, and planning what she called the final solution to the Martinez problem. It wasn't just harassment. It was stalking. It was premeditation. The investigation also revealed that Linda had been embezzling money from the HOA for years, using her position to intimidate other families who might question her authority. We weren't her first targets, just her most vulnerable ones. Detective Williams visited us a few days later with an update. "Colonel, we've charged Patterson with attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, stalking, harassment, and about 6 other charges. With her history and the premeditation we can prove, she's looking at 25 to life." But the legal victory felt hollow. Emma was alive, but she was traumatized. She'd stopped wanting to play in the front yard. She flinched every time she heard a car door slam. The therapy sessions weren't just for her cerebral palsy anymore. Now she needed help processing the psychological trauma of having someone try to kill her simply for existing. 3 weeks after the incident, Emma asked me a question that broke my heart. "Daddy, am I really a freak like Mrs. Patterson said?" I knelt down beside her wheelchair and took her small hands in mine. "Emma, look at me. You are the most perfect, beautiful, amazing daughter any father could ask for." Mrs. Patterson was sick in her mind and her heart. The things she said had nothing to do with you and everything to do with her own broken soul. "But I can't walk like other kids. I need help with things." Maybe she was right. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "Baby girl, do you know what I see when I look at you?" She shook her head. "I see a warrior. I see someone who faces challenges every single day that would defeat grown adults, and you do it with a smile. I see someone who is kind to others even when they're not kind to you. I see someone who finds joy in planting flowers and reading books and helping her friends. You are not disabled, Emma. You are differently abled. And you are perfect exactly as you are." That night, for the first time since the shooting, Emma slept through the night without nightmares. Word of what had happened spread quickly through Willowbrook Estates and beyond. The response was overwhelming. Mrs. Chin, who had called the police, organized a neighborhood watch specifically to protect families with disabled children. The Rodriguez family from down the street, whose son had autism, came forward with their own stories of Linda's harassment. The Johnsons, whose elderly father lived with them, shared similar experiences. The new HOA board, elected after Linda's arrest, immediately revoked all the citations Linda had issued to our family. They also established new policies protecting residents with disabilities and their families. But the most meaningful response came from Emma's classmates and their families. They organized a Flowers for Emma campaign, planting the same flowers that Linda had tried to destroy all throughout the neighborhood. Within a week, Willowbrook Estates was blooming with the same daisies and sunflowers that Emma had been tending in our front yard. Linda Patterson's trial began 6 months later. The prosecution had built an airtight case, with surveillance video from multiple houses showing her harassment campaign and, most damning of all, the shooting itself. I testified about the months of harassment, the escalating threats, and finally, that terrible Tuesday morning. When the prosecutor asked me to describe the moment I saw the gun pointed at Emma, I had to pause to collect myself. "I've been in combat zones," I said. "I've faced armed enemies in life-threatening situations. But seeing that weapon pointed at my disabled daughter, a child who couldn't run, couldn't hide, couldn't defend herself, that was the most terrifying moment of my life." Emma didn't have to testify, thank God. But the video evidence spoke for itself. Linda's defense attorney tried to paint her as a woman under stress, dealing with neighborhood disputes that had gotten out of hand. He claimed she never intended to hurt anyone, that the gun had gone off accidentally. The prosecution destroyed that argument by presenting Linda's journal, with page after page of increasingly violent fantasies about dealing with families like ours. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. At Linda Patterson's sentencing hearing, the judge allowed victim impact statements. I stood at the podium looking at the woman who had tried to murder my daughter and spoke from my heart. "Your Honor, Linda Patterson didn't just point a gun at my daughter. She pointed it at everything she represents: hope, innocence, the belief that all people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. She tried to destroy not just Emma's life, but her spirit." I paused, glancing back at Emma, who was sitting with Sarah in the gallery. But she failed. My daughter is stronger than Linda Patterson's hatred. She's kinder than Linda Patterson's cruelty. And she will grow up in a world where justice exists, where people who try to harm the innocent face consequences for their actions. The judge sentenced Linda Patterson to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole for 15 years. He also ordered her to pay for Emma's therapy and medical expenses related to the trauma she'd caused. As they led her away, Linda looked back at our family one last time. But instead of the hatred I expected to see, her eyes were empty. She looked like what she was, a broken person who had destroyed her own life through her choices. That was a year ago. Today Emma is 13, and while she still has difficult days, she's healing. She's back to tending her flowers, though now she has help from half the neighborhood kids who want to learn from her. We decided to stay in Willowbrook Estates. Running away would have let Linda Patterson win, even from prison. Instead, we've become part of the solution, working with the new HOA to make our community truly welcoming for all families. I started a non-profit organization called Emma's Garden, which helps families with disabled children deal with discrimination and harassment. We provide legal assistance, emotional support, and advocacy. So far, we've helped over 200 families across the state. Emma is our youngest board member. People often ask me how I stayed so calm during those months of harassment, how I didn't lose my temper and do something that might have made the situation worse. The answer is simple. I had something to protect that was more important than my pride or my anger. I had a daughter who needed me to be strong, to be smart, and to show her that justice exists in this world. Linda Patterson thought she could intimidate us because she saw Emma's wheelchair and assumed we were weak, that we wouldn't fight back. She thought a disabled child and her family would be easy targets. She was wrong about everything. She didn't know that Emma's father was a decorated military police colonel who had spent his career protecting people from bullies just like her. She didn't know that our family was surrounded by a community of people who believe in standing up for what's right. And most importantly, she didn't know that Emma herself has a strength that can't be measured by physical ability. A strength of spirit that makes her more powerful than any gun, any threat, any hatred. As I write this, Emma is in the backyard with her friends, all of them working together to plant a new section of her garden. Some of the kids are in wheelchairs, some have other disabilities, and some are what we call typically developing. But you know what? When they're laughing together, helping each other, creating something beautiful, you can't tell the difference. Because there is no difference. They're just kids, being kids, in a world that's a little bit safer because people like Linda Patterson are behind bars where they belong. Emma calls to me from the garden, "Daddy, come see the new flowers. They're going to be so pretty." I close my laptop and head outside. Because that's what matters, not the Linda Pattersons of the world but the Emmas. The children who face each day with courage, who find joy in simple things, who teach us adults what real strength looks like. Linda Patterson fired a gun at my disabled daughter, thinking she could destroy something beautiful. Instead, she made it grow stronger. And Emma's garden, both the one in our backyard and the metaphorical one that represents hope, acceptance, and love, continues to bloom.